Hi, this is Brendan Davis from Bedrock Games and the Bedrock Blog, and I'm here with Lady Chow Fung and Adam, and Kenny is out sick, so we're wishing him well. But we are going to be talking about Brave Archer 2, a 1978 film directed by Cheng Che. This is the story of the heroic couple, Guo Jing and Huang Rong, and it's the second in an epic three-part adaptation of Jin Yong's classic Legend of Condor Heroes. So, I guess before we get into the individual scenes, did you guys have general thoughts on whether you like this one, what you thought of it compared with the other ones?
I like this one, but it's not my favorite of the first three. The third one's my favorite, but I like this one.
Yeah, I liked it. It took me a little while to get into this one. I was kind of a little confused in the early part of the movie. Like I did, but around the time we get to the scene of, the part where they're kind of watching everything through a little hole, and that's where I started to really get truly pulled into this movie.
Okay.
And then I just enjoyed it all the way through.
Well, that's a good. I think we can sort of talk a little bit about that opening sequence, which I think you're talking about sort of when they had the narration and they kind of were cutting from thing to thing, and
Well, I was fine. It wasn't so much the narration that I had a problem with or anything. It was more just the part past that I kind of I didn't feel as connected to what was going on. It's like they're running around looking for a manual and whatever, and I wasn't, I don't know, I wasn't that invested in
So around the Jinlun Inn section is when your sort of brain was like, okay, I can wrap my head around this stuff. But
I would have wrapped my head around it. I just got emotionally interested in what was going in too. That was when I really committed into the movie, and I was like, okay, yeah, I'm back in again. I mean, probably if I watched it a second time, I'd be in it through the whole movie. But
well, and it covers a lot of ground. There's a lot going on. And,
yeah, exactly.
And so to just get right into it, like the first, there's that whole narration thing where they talk about the aftermath of the contest they had. And one little detail that gets added here is Zhu Batong shows up and, blasts apart the Nine Yin manual and then reveals that he taught Guo Jing to recite the manual, and Huang Yaoshi kicks him off the island because he thinks he's lying and he's upset. And
yeah, it was a weird thing to kind of have thrown into the montage thing for a big event.
If you felt thrust into it, and it was sort of like, I know what you mean.
It made me wonder. I thought, wait, did I watch the whole movie? Did I turn it off before it was over? Or was that like the? I was just, that was like part of my problem too. But yeah, I like the movie on the whole though. It was very enjoyable, and of course you have to get used to the new Huang Rong too. That was another adjustment,
another big change. But what ends up happening is Zhu Batong, Hong Qigong, and Guo Jing end up on a boat. Basically, they crash on an island and they're chased by Ouyang Feng, who also has Huang Rong on his boat, I believe, because she tried to go after them and her boat crashed also. So there's a lot of boat crashes.
Right. And, a lot of boat crashes.
It was a big storm.
Yeah, there and then she the Ouyang Feng, basically he realizes that because Guo Jing has memorized this manual, he can get him to write it down for him, and so he forces Guo Jing onto his boat and makes him write down the manual. But Hong Qigong tells him, just change it when you're writing it. Make a change here or there, not too much, but just enough that it's not usable. And so that happens, and then once he's done, Ouyang Feng is like, well, now I'm done with you, so I'm gonna, I might as well kill you. And there's a big fight, but the fight sort of dies down, and Ouyang Feng says to Hong Qigong, look, let's meet up at another time, and we'll arrange to fight. It's too inconvenient to fight right now. And then Hong Qigong agrees, and as he's walking away, Ouyang Feng palms him in the back, and he's crippled by the attack, and there's more fighting, and the end result is Ouyang Kei's legs get crushed when Guo Jing pushes a big giant boulder off of a small cliff onto him, and And so that's pretty much the gist of this sequence of the film. There's a couple of things I wanted to talk about with it, but obviously, Adam, you found this a little bit confusing, and I think it makes sense that you would, because it's on the cusp of this rapid narration, and then you're just sort of like, wait, where are we? We're on an island all of a sudden. So
yeah, and another thing to bring up too is, the narrator is going very fast, and that means the subtitles are going very fast too. It was just like flash, 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 flash. I usually have no issue with subtitles, but these were some speedy subtitles.
Sometimes they're like a machine gun, like they just kind of come out at you like that.
There was one point later in the movie where I believe the subtitle was literally up there for about like less than a second. It just went like blink. It was like
my favorite is when the rhythm's off, when you get one that lingers and then one that flashes by.
Yeah.
But so some of my thoughts on this were, number one, you get that moment where Hong Shigong and Ouyang Fung sort of square off, and they're doing their palms against each other, and you get like this glimpse of these two masters that are just like they're two of the five greats, and you just get to see sort of how enormous their power is in that sort of brief moment before Ouyang Fung tricks him. And then when he does trick him, this is something in Jin Yong novels especially, he makes a point of emphasizing this, that when a character says, okay, I'm going to fight you on X and X a day, so let's stop fighting now, that's like a thing that's supposed to be honored. Like, that's a really important thing. And so Ouyang Fung just totally ignores that and basically back palms him, I guess. He it's just a real sneaky move. So I know. Any other thoughts on this sequence?
I thought that the giving the fake manual, making him change words every now and then, just enough so that it looks real, but he's not going to realize that it's not. I thought that was an ingenious idea, because he's going to study the manual, and there are going to be consequences later on that we don't get to see in this movie. But you can't wait for that to happen, because it's going to come. But I think it was just brilliant, and I'm surprised it didn't come from Huang Rong, because she's the clever one of the group, and you would expect her to do something deceitful like that, and not from the beggar clan leader. So I thought that was pretty cool.
I did like the fact that she enjoyed the idea so much. When he whispered it to Huang Rong, she was just like dying laughing. She's just like, yeah, it's great.
I honestly can't remember how it pans out in the next movie for some reason, but I know in the story, when he does learn the manual the wrong way, Huang Rong is the one who does that. But there is also the boat sequence, so I'm a little unclear on. But I just can't remember in the next movie how it
doesn't happen in the third one. It happens in Brave Archer and His Mate is when it shows up that he's learned the manual wrong.
Oh, okay. All right.
That was a spoiler alert.
Okay. So let me just say that there will be spoilers this episode, and obviously, Adam, for you, there might be some spoilers for your Return of Condor Heroes stuff.
But the fact that the manual thing comes back later in the story isn't a huge spoiler for me. So I kind of figured something would. I'd be disappointed if it was never brought up again. Let's say that.
But then the next sequence, which is really short, is basically Yang Kang having an interaction with the Jin Prince, and who is sort of, he's up until very recently regarded as his father, and this is sort of the first of many instances where Yang Kang is sort of really leaning more towards his Jin lineage than his Han lineage, and the father basically says, or the prince says, I regard you as my son, and we will exterminate the Song in the next 10 years, and the kingdom will be passed to you. And Yang Kang seems to be on board with this program. But after that, we get to the sequence at the temple where Guo Jing and Huang Rong take Hong Qigong, who's been poisoned by the palm, into an old temple to recover. And it's there that Rong sends out Guo Jing to go look for Zhu Batong so that they can deal with Ouyang Feng in case he returns. And at this point, Hong Qigong, realizing that he's badly injured, passes his dog beating stick technique to Huang Rong so that she can become the 19th chief of the Beggar clan. And then they leave to sort of join up with Guo Jing again. But it's an important moment in the story, and I don't know if you guys have any thoughts on that one before we move to the next set of things.
But it's another point I think that you left out from that part is that there's a meeting at the inn also going on that Hong Rong kind of happens upon by accident. I think it's Ouyang Feng and his nephew.
Oh yeah,
there.
That's what I was about to get into, actually.
Okay.
I separate, but yeah, why don't you talk about that one, because that's the next step.
Well, they're at the inn, and Ouyang Kang and Feng and Kay are there, and the Jin prince, he comes, and they're all talking about getting this this manual, but really Ouyang Feng is not very interested in the manual due to that it's not a kung fu manual, really. It's more of an art of war type of manual where they can use it to extinguish the song. And then Huang Rong finds out, and while they're there, she's taught the dog beating stick technique. She's using chopsticks, and her master is using his stick to help her. It's a good scene. I like the techniques, and they're having fun with it.
The way he's teaching her with the chopstick to do
chopsticks.
Yeah.
Yes,
that was a cool scene.
I thought that was. Yeah, it was, I thought that was an interesting way to train someone with chopsticks instead of, that's what they had handy, so that's what you use. But it was a good way in a small space to teach her what she needed to know so that when she got to the Beggars Clan meeting that she could prove who she really was.
And the other thing I like about this scene is this is kind of one of those moments in the film where like every character kind of shows up exactly where they need to be for the story to work. Like Ouyang Feng and Ouyang Kang happen to be staying at the inn because Ouyang Ke is injured and his uncle is helping him recover. The Jin Prince and his retinue happen to arrive at the inn, and Huang Rong and Hong Qigong happen to be in another room. And so it's
and they're next door because she licks her finger and pokes a hole in the paper so that she can keep an eye on them. They're right next door. It's just like, how convenient is that?
But it's one of these things too where like you worry just to not worry about. Like it actually works out really well for the story purposes, even though it's like it's a little bit overly convenient. I kind of like that they don't sweat that too much. They don't come up with any elaborate reason for them to have to all be there at the same time. It just kind of happens. And that's the Fulai Inn scene. And then after Huang Rong and Hong Qigong head out, they connect again with Guo Jing and Zhu Batong, and they find this dilapidated inn. And in the inn, they meet a woman named Shagu, who is I think in the translation she's called Dumb Lass is the sub they use for her, whose mother is dead, and she's kind of a crazy character. And I believe that this is supposed to be an inn in the hometown of the parents of Yang Kang and Guo Jing. And so they go to the kitchen to make some food. By the way, I thought that this kitchen was a really great they really sort of show you all the contents of the kitchen. And just as a gamer, I was like, ooh, that's very useful, very useful reference. that I'm gonna hold on to for later. But they go to the kitchen to cook, and they find a bowl that's stuck to like the shelf. And when they try to move the bowl, it opens a secret passage. And inside the passage, they find the skeletons of two men. One of them was a disciple of Huang Yaoshi and was killed by an official who chased him for stealing things from the palace. And he was one of the disciples that Huang Yaoshi crippled in his rage many years ago. And so it seems that the bodies have been here for 10 years, and the scene sort of transitions when they start eating, and Hong Qigong decides that he's not happy with the food that's laid out, and he needs better ingredients. So they're just gonna go to the palace and steal from the pantry at the palace. I don't know. Is there anything anybody wants to talk about with the Jin Luing In scene before we get to the palace scene? Or
question? Is he the skeleton that was found? Is he the real brother of in the first movie? Remember, there was the other crippled cook that they went to go visit, and I can't remember, and the 7 weird show up there, and everybody basically congregates in the one spot at the crippled cook's house. Weren't there 4 disciples?
I forget how many disciples he had, but they're both disciples of the same master. So the guy on the ground, I think, is Chu Ling Feng, the skeleton. He's also the father of Shagu.
Right.
And I don't know if he was somebody's blood brother or not, but he was definitely you're thinking of Lu Cheng Feng, right? The master of the manor, Guiyun Manor, from the last episode.
First movie, yes.
They're both disciples of Huang Yaoshi.
Okay.
And the whole point of that that they were talking about there is that the reason he died in that instant was because, or not the reason, but the thing that didn't allow him to survive was the fact that he was crippled by Huang Yaoshi, and Huang Yaoshi kind of feels some remorse when he finds out what happened there.
Because he was supposed to be the best disciple of the 4, right?
Yeah, and he was stealing that stuff to impress Huang Yaoshi. It was like he stole like a bunch of paintings and stuff from the palace, because Huang Yaoshi's like this, this guy who's really into poetry and music and refined arts. But the next scene I really like, because they go to the palace to steal ingredients from the pantry, and Zhu Batong is like, "Where's the delicacies?" And Huang Rong is like, "Well, we'll have to wait, and when the chef shows up, we'll just grab him and we'll make him tell us where the delicacies are." And this is also as Prince Wan Yan and his retinue are arriving at the palace to get that manual of General Yu Fei. So it's this very sort of, again, another sort of convenient meeting, and they only find out because Huang Rong and Guo Jing are like, "Oh, weren't they supposed to be looking for that manual? We might as well go look around and see if they're here." And sure enough, the manual is behind a waterfall near a pavilion, and there's a big battle, and Ouyang Feng sort of steps in because he's now sort of operating with the Jin Prince, and none of the other men are able to deal with Guo Jing, but Yang Kang, while Ouyang Feng and Guo Jing are fighting, runs up behind Guo Jing and stabs him, and leaves him to die, and Huang Rong finds him wounded, and she takes him back to the inn where they recover. But I don't know if I missed anything in that, because there was kind of a lot that happened in that scene. But I thought it was a fun scene, and I like that sort of they're so powerful they just think nothing of just walking into the palace to steal ingredients for their meal. That was just something about the setting of wuxia, where characters are at that level of physical power that they're not even afraid of even like when the guards show up, the prince and his men just kind of look at them and walk away. It's like they're just insignificant. So I don't know. Do you guys have any thoughts of that scene?
Yeah, I mean, this was about where I started to get more kind of grounded in the movie. I mean, it's there was more, up to this point, it almost felt a little muddled to me. I hadn't quite got my bearings yet. I mean, it's as much me and trying to follow things as much as the movie, but I'd say actually this is where I really started to get involved, but yeah, it was a good sequence. Like you say, it is really entertaining how just ridiculous going to the Imperial kitchen is.
And yeah, no, it was, I don't know, I thought it was a very funny scene. And then when they get back to the inn, they go back to that little chamber, and Guo Jing, says that he can be cured, if with a method from the Nine Yin manual, and except there's all these things, there's all these rules, and so they have to press their palms together, but they can't move and they can't talk to anybody else for 7 days, and so they got to stay in that little chamber, and all these, and I don't want to go over every little thing that happens, but all these things start happening the moment they sit down to do that, and test their ability to remain sort of locked in that position, healing Guo Jing, until he's healed. So
Yeah.
Sorry, were you gonna say something?
So yeah, I say this is where I really the whole little thing of them having to hide there and keep that thing while just so many crazy things were going on outside. Just that was where I started to really thoroughly enjoy the movie. Just the whole concept there just really entertained me.
Yeah, it was just event after event. First, you have these two people that come in and you're not exactly sure if they even like each other because they're standing so far apart. They're not even talking to each other. They're talking to some statue in the wall. Then, Yang Kang, and he comes in after his fiance, Mu Nianxi, comes in, and, Ouyang K is trying to take off the women's clothes. It's just the weirdest thing. Yeah. But there are so many things that are going on. You're wondering, how can they possibly keep their hands, especially Guo, because he's such a kind-hearted guy that he wants to right every wrong and stop a wrong before it happens. So he must be getting anxious to the point that they're not going to stay with their palms together the whole entire 7 days after all these things have gone on outside.
No, and that's and Huang Rong is really what holds him back, because in many moments if there's one scene where Yang Kang is about to kill Wan Yan and ends up instead putting his gown or his cape on top of him to keep him warm. So it's sort of the moment where Yang Kang makes the final decision, I'm gonna go for riches and power, and then there's the couple, and the guy is the son of Lu Chongfeng, who's the person we were just talking about, and the girl, I think she's a disciple of one of the Chuanzhen Taoists, but I don't quite remember. But basically he comes in and he reveals that he has been ordered by the master of Peach Blossom Island, Huang Yaoshi, to track down Guo Jing, and if failing that, find the remaining 7 freaks and kill them. And so, so we know that Huang Yaoshi is still hunting after Guo Jing over this manual business. And then when Ouyang Ke shows up, he does that whole thing where he torments the woman that's with Lu Guanying, the son of Lu Chengfeng, and he ends up also doing it to Mu Nianqi, so that he can lure out Huang Rong and Guo Jing from their hiding space. He's trying to get them to come out, and they're not taking the bait. But then when Yang Kang shows up, he sort of kills 2 birds with one stone. Number one, Mu Nianqi is his fiance, But number two, Uyung Ka is in his way. You know, he wants to become the disciple of Uyung Fung, and he realizes, well, he can just use this opportunity to kill Uyung Fung, and both of those problems will be resolved. So, and he succeeds. He does it in a very sneaky way. He sits him down to have a cup of wine together. He's like, well, okay, yeah, you know, taking off the clothes, that's great, but let's have some wine if we're going to do this. And he doesn't let on at all what he's planning, and then he stabs him under the table, and Uyung Ka dies. And so it's a really important part of the story. I don't know, what'd you think of him taking out Uyung Ka like that? Was that...
It was an interesting case of of him getting to do the really underhanded thing he wanted to do, and doing it in a way that, oh, I'm a good guy, look at me, I took him out and saved you. I mean, that was pretty remarkable there. Yeah, and of course we see later in the movie he is not in any way become a more heroic figure after that. That was yeah, that was very, very well done.
But I was surprised that he actually revealed in the conversation that he had with Mu afterwards that part of the reason was that he wanted to be taught by Ouyang Fung. I thought he would have kept that part to himself.
Yeah, it would have been more
I
sneaky.
know. That was like a slip.
He did kind of smooth it over, though. He did kind of say, well... you know, like, I'm honoring my agreement over the duel to marry you, right? So you know I'm not lying. You know, it was. I mean, he's definitely, not improving as time goes on in terms of his moral character, we'll say. But then even more stuff continues to happen at this inn. So we have this big thing where Uyung Ka dies and all this stuff. But things continue to happen around them. The Chuanzhen Taoists show up, and they've heard about Mei Chao Feng's grudge, and they're concerned about all these events going on. If there's a big fight, they want to be there. And Mei Chao Feng herself arrives and chasing one of the Taoists and fights them when they're doing their North Star formation. And then Yao Shi arrives, and he just chucks Mei Chao Feng out of the fray and starts taking on the Taoists themselves at the urging of Uyung Fung, who's also there. And Uyung Fung kills one of the Chuanzhen Taoists, and then and it looks like he's about to attack Yao Shi himself, and Mei Chao Feng steps in, and he ends up giving her a fatal blow, and then just kind of takes off. And Mei Chao Feng, right before she dies, she's accepted back as a student by Huang Yaoshi. He's kind of making amends with all of the disciples that he's crippled, and he's also, it's interesting, his character is kind of making these amends, and he's also sort of realizing, oh, this Uyang Feng's a really bad guy, like people say, my favorite character, Mei Chao Feng, dies, and then but then the seven freaks show up, or the remaining seven freaks show up, and they start fighting with Huang Yaoshi, and then finally Guo Jing can't handle it anymore, and he bursts out, and when Huang Yaoshi sees his daughter, he's so happy he decides to stop fighting, and he heals Guo Jing. And then takes Shagu as his disciple when he learns about all the stuff in the hidden chamber, and he takes a look at the poems, and there's a poem in there by Yu Fei, but he seems to suggest that it was fraudulent. I'm not 100% sure on what he was trying to say there. And then Uyung Feng returns asking what happened to his nephew. And there's a further exchange of palms, and then Uyung Feng departs. And so what do you guys think of this scene? I know I glossed over a lot because there were literally, I think over 40 notable things happen in this scene.
Yeah.
No,
Oh, go ahead.
That scene was just very, very, very busy. with everything that was going on and trying to keep track of everybody. And it just goes to show one little misunderstanding just blows up in all their faces and creates more of a problem than it really should.
Yeah, we were just talking about that in the other podcast on Return of Condor Heroes, where so much of it is like a communication breakdown, like just like a little mistake in communication or cross signals, and you have these grudges and these these people going off and killing themselves or whatever. It's just sort of could all be resolved if people were just a little bit more clear. But yeah, I know it's a really I mean I really like this sequence because it's kind of like it feels like the center of the movie, and and they managed to get so much drama in this one location just by having all the characters kind of come and go as they need to. So in a lot of ways, it kind of makes it feel a little bit like a play as a result, because it's really about the drama between whatever mix of characters happen to be on the scene at that moment.
Yeah, I agree. It is the center of the movie, because I mean we've still got the gathering of the beggar sect, but I mean that was more of just kind of getting some closure. You kind of knew how it was going to happen. The stuff that was happening here at the end, there's all the stuff you have there's so many different ways things can go. It was just a lot more chaotic, and I mean, I liked Gathering of the Beggars, the Gathering of the Beggar Sect Part 2, but this was the highlight.
And this ends with the Seven Freaks and Huang Yaoshi agreeing on the marriage, and they're now welcome at Peach Blossom Island, and Huang Rong and Guo Jing decide to go to the meeting of the beggars, which is coming because she's the new leader of the beggar sect, and
I think this also shows a mellowing of Huang Yushi too. In the first film, I get this feeling that he's really strict and really hard, and no one's ever going to be good enough for his daughter, and pretty much evil. But as this film goes, he's doing things that aren't what you would have expected him to do. Like he marries that one couple, even though he forces them to get married, but they still wanted to be married anyway. But he marries the one couple, and, he's making amends for past mistakes. And, he does heal his son-in-law, and, he's just so happy to see his daughter. I kind of feel like he's mellowing out through the journey of this film.
Well, he is, and his whole thing, and it's interesting to see where he goes in the next story. But like his whole thing is he's the heretic, so he's like the guy who doesn't like the rules, and so he's mellowing, but he's also, it's interesting to see where this takes him, because he as much as he mellows, he never really seems to warm up enough to Guo Jing to want to be around him all the time. But yeah, and there is that great scene where he's fighting the mercenaries of the Jin Prince, and he rips off one of their arms because they won't walk. And he says, if you want to leave, you got to walk under my legs." And the two remaining guys crawl under him. He's just this ferocious, powerful master that you do not want to mess with. But
he didn't kill them, because you would have expected him just to kill all three of them. And when they didn't move fast enough, you would have expected him to kill all three of them. But he gave them a shot, so.
Yeah, though he did rip one of their arms off. I mean, I think he's tough but fair, I think we can say.
Yeah, but I agree with you. Like, him not warming up to Guo Jing, it's just, he's mellowed out as far as his feelings about his daughter is what it is. It's like he's willing, okay, that's what you want. I respect you, and he's giving her what she wants, but it doesn't mean he has to like this guy. It's just
well, and again, this is a little spoilery, but I think what it becomes clear in the next book is I think he just finds Guo Jing a very boring sort of person who is always doing things by the rules, and and so when he meets Yang Kang's son in the second story, it's a very interesting sort of relationship. But yeah, so this brings us to the Gathering of Beggars, which is very interesting, and also this is where Lu Feng gets to make a big appearance as one of the beggar elders. But they show up at a restaurant at the same time that Yang Kong is showing up in the same area, and Yang Kong connects with this guy Elder Peng, who is a real sort of nasty piece of work, and is a master hypnotist. And Yang Kong kind of plots with them when he sees Huang Rong and Guo Jing, and after they meet Beggar Lu, who's Lu Feng's character, they the Elder Peng comes up to them and says, "Oh, he just poisoned your wine," and he says, "But never fear, I have the antidote." He takes out this real sketchy powder and tries to get them to drink it, and they are not having it. But then he does this "look into my eyes" business.
No, Huang Rong is not having it,
right? Because Guo is going to fall into that.
Thanks for the antidote.
Yeah, that's true. He's still a little. Yeah, he's pretty slow. But she's not falling for it. But this guy hypnotizes them and puts them to sleep, and then they wake up bound at the beggar sect meeting, and Yang Kong is there taking over the beggar sect and saying that he was the one who was selected as the next chief, and that that Hong Qigong was murdered by Huang Yaoshi, and Guo Jing and Huang Rong are his accomplices, and that they need to execute them. And then things get further complicated when the head of Iron Palm sect shows up, eventually Huang Rong is able to after Guo Jing sort of has his revelation looking at the stars, breaks free from his ropes and fights everybody. Huang Rong is able to snatch the stick back and demonstrate that she knows the stick techniques, and she becomes the 19th chief of the beggar sect. And Yang Kong sort of decides that it's in his best interest to sneak away with the chief of Iron Palm sect. And there's a big battle between the Iron Palm chief and Guo Jing, and it ends with Iron Palm and Yang Kong leaving, and the beggars cheering, and then Huang Rong and Guo Jing sort of chasing after them to find out if they know anything about the Yu Fei manual. So I probably left out some details, but does that what do you guys think of the final confrontation and the beggar meeting?
If Yang Kong had known that in order for the Beggars Clan to accept him as their leader, that they had to spit on him, I bet he probably wouldn't have wanted that position.
He looked really upset when that was, and he was dressed in his
sure
finery.
Did.
He was like in his best clothing that he clearly had spent time getting this outfit ready for this gathering, and they just start.
It's
spitting.
not just spit; it's beggar spit.
Yeah.
It's
exactly.
just a whole special quality of spit.
And to me, that was just desserts for him. He got what he deserved in that part.
Yeah, I was wondering if if he was going to be so surprised this was happening, he was going to view it as them not accepting him, if he was going to read it wrong or something. But he was like upset by it, but he didn't actually take it that way though.
And I love just as Huang Rong is sort of establishing that she's supposed to be the new chief now. Elder Peng sort of up to his old tricks, and he tries to do the "look into my eyes" bit again, but Guo Jing's able to reverse it, and or help her reverse it, and he ends up going kind of crazy. But yeah, I don't know. This ending was interesting. This kind of what it reminds me of is Star Wars. I don't know why. I feel like at the end of Empire Strikes Back for some reason. At this moment in the film series. And I don't know what it is. I think it's because it sort of ends in a similar sort of we kind of know where the story is going. You know what I mean? We know where they're heading, but they're not quite they need to sort of, everything is, nobody really Well, somebody did lose an arm, but none of the heroes.
But, yeah, well, you got like not just Empire Strikes Back. You've also got the Star Wars itself in there because it ends with them up on a platform in front of a crowd, and
Yeah, it was a lot like that, wasn't it?
Well, actually, Guo Jing's outfit, that's like first movie Luke Skywalker outfit there. He's wearing pretty much exactly the same thing Luke Skywalker is wearing. So that's something I picked up on. I'm like, hey, that's where they got Luke's clothes from. But well, I mean, this movie, not particularly this movie, but the genre itself.
Well, I often hear people say, did George Lucas know about Condor Heroes? Because there's a lot of things in Condor, and I don't know, but there's a lot of things that seem to make their way into Star Wars that also are in Condor Heroes. And so
we did have someone kill someone under a table, which is another Star Wars moment too. So
and there's the I'm your father, and in the in the second story, the main character loses an arm. And there's all kinds of things. But corrupt empire.
That
but,
too.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I don't know what the chances of George Lucas actually being able to encounter this story in the 70s were. But yeah, so I don't know. Feelings on where the movies are at this point, on any of the characters that you liked or didn't like, thoughts on the fight choreography.
Ultimately, I'm more invested. Like I said, I liked the first one more when I was watching it. It took me a little while to get into this, and I started really enjoying it. But I feel overall I'm more invested in the series as a whole than I was at the end of the last movie. It's like I'm totally on board for the third movie now. So yeah, I'm feeling good about the series, definitely.
Yeah, I'm more invested in the story than actually the fight sequences, even though I think the fight sequences are really good. I love the palm against palm, the frog style that eventually comes up. I like all the fighting sequences. I think they're really good. But the story, for some reason, in this series of movies is the most important part. And it's very well written, and I'm enjoying it. I mean, I've seen them all already, and I will have Brave Archer weekends where I watch them back to back to back because I like it. So, but yeah, this is one of my favorite trilogies, I guess.
I mean, the story is remade so many times into series and movies, so I think there's something. There's a reason I think that it had. It resonates. It's hard to compress into 3 movies, but I think they do a good job. I guess there's 4, but the 4th movie is really the second story in the trilogy. But I think this is I don't know. I think it's something about this movie just really works for me, and I don't know quite what it is. You can definitely tell it's a Chang Cheh movie, but it feels a little bit different somehow than some of his other films. And it feels like he's I don't know, like he does a lot to establish atmosphere with very few scene changes. Do you know what I mean? So,
and for me too, it's having the strong female character. I know I'm always talking about that, but for me, it's the strong female character, which you don't always find in a lot of his movies, especially during this time period. It's towards the latter part. He did do the early movies with a couple of strong female leads, but you have an epic couple. It's not a brotherhood like all the Venom movies are. So, just having the epic couple and all the things that they have to go through, and they're the yin and the yang. They're perfect for each other. And she's strong, she's smart, and I think she's fair like her father, even through her deceptions and everything, but she does it with a good, kind heart. There's a reason for why she's doing it. And so I think that also makes it better for me too.
I think too, not just her. Like they're like in terms of like Mei Chao Feng's a great character too. Like they have
Oh
like,
yes.
really strong female characters in general. But I think I like about Huang Rong is she's not just a strong female character. She's a really good character. Period.
Yes.
Like that's the thing. That's the thing that really impresses me about her. And that carries over into the next series. You know, I think part of it is the writer. You know, he's very good at coming up with characters, and the protagonists are always so interesting. But the pairing of the two, the sort of they just really match well, and it's a really well thought out sort of heroic couple. And like you said, she's smart, she's strong, but like even sometimes some of the most impressive things about these characters isn't when they're the most physically powerful, but when they aren't and they're able to use their wits to get around a bigger threat, which she does all the time. That's sort of one of her big strengths.
Mm-hmm.
And so yeah, I definitely agree with you there. And it's interesting, you know. I'd be curious to, you know, if we get into the Return of Condor Hero stuff, you know, that's sort of similar. But yeah, so I don't know. I think this is a really solid. By the end of this movie, it's sort of like Adam was saying. You're just very excited about what's coming down the road. You feel like you've been part of a big thing, and now you can't wait for the finale.
Yeah, and I feel too like, you know, I said that it took me a little while to get into this movie, but it's not a case with some movies. It's because the beginning just isn't that great. I feel like if I were to sit down and watch this again now, I just enjoy it all the way through, because it wasn't like it was a slow beginning or it was boring. It was just too much for me to really take in early in the movie. And now that I've got the plot in my head, I think I just enjoy it straight through.
Well, there's a lot of characters to know, and it's the kind of movie they sort of make it assuming people kind of maybe know the story, I think, and know the characters. So it's like if you go and watch a movie based on some historical event or some religious thing, where you're just kind of supposed to know, hey, these 8 people are really important, and so it can be very difficult your first time, especially in this format. I feel like the best first encounter with the story is either a translation of the book or a television series where it's a little more stretched out. So like you get the 7 freaks, but you're at least dealing with the 7 freaks in like an episode, and not the 7 freaks plus this plus this plus this. There's a lot to digest. But I feel like Adam's saying, I think like once you digest it and then you go back, it really works well. And
yeah, and I mean, if I were familiar with the books, which a lot of people are, I wouldn't even have that first issue time too. It's like, you know, if it was a story I already knew, I would be on board right away.
Well, here's one thing I will say. Sometimes I find, even if you're familiar with the story, because the subtitles have different names for the characters, or they change things, I've been equally as confused as if I...
Okay, well, I'll take that part back, but I stand by my other statements.
But one thing I'm interested in knowing, because we're planning on doing a Return of Condor Heroes viewing for the series, how this is sort of shaping your expectations, knowing that this is the first part of the story.
Oh, in a great way. I mean, it's, you know, you going, hey, we're going to watch a really long series is always something that could be scary, because if you hate it, it's a huge commitment. But it's like, I really like these characters. I really like this story. And, you know, I like to say, it's such a good story underlying it. I'm fine with the fact that it's going to be a different series with different actors and so on, just because this is a good story. I've got confidence that, you know, we're going to get something good in this series, assuming it's a good production. So yeah, I've held, you know, you've given me the book to read, and I'm holding off on it because I'm enjoying these movies so much. I want to enjoy this first story as itself before I actually dip into the book, and you know, and we've still got a fair amount of Babylon 5 to go, so I'll have time to get started, get ahead on the book before we actually get to the series. But yeah.
One thing I do with the books sometimes is because the series are pretty much like, I mean, if you have 40 or 50 episodes and these are 40 chapter books, they can kind of cover everything pretty evenly. Sometimes they have to even invent stuff to keep it going. But I find that it's really great to read chapters as you're watching episodes because it tends to stay in your brain a little bit more. Do you know what I mean? And it kind of gives you motivation. It's like you kind of have like a motive to continue. That's how I like to do it sometimes. Not all the time, but if there's a series that I know is good and I'm reading the book, I'll do that. And yeah, so I don't know. Any additional thoughts?
I like the cast that was assembled. I didn't mind the changing of the Huang Rong character, switching the person who did it, who portrayed her. I thought it flowed for me. I remember the first time I watched it, I didn't even notice. And then the second time I realized, oh, wait, these are two different people.
Yeah, I think Kenny said he didn't notice either. And I feel like, I mean, they look different, but like it's the same character. So, there were a couple of cast changes in that respect. And but hers was the one that I maybe found the most jarring the first time I watched it. But I think what's the actress's name? Now is that her name? The in Archer 2 and 3.
Well, it's spelled differently in different places because sometimes I've seen it spelled Niu instead of Nau. So. Okay,
okay. So, whether it's now or New. She I thought she did a good job as Huang Rong, so I think it works. So
I did too.
Yeah.
Because for me,
ahead.
I had seen Invincible Shaolin first, and in Invincible Shaolin, she plays Lu Feng's love interest in that one, and she kind of reminded me of Huang Rong. She's got the same kind of sassiness. Mm-hmm. That Huang Rong does. So, I mean, she plays that kind of character very well in both movies.
Yeah, it took me, like I said, I mentioned it took me a little while to warm up to her, but I literally mean a little while. It's like it was jarring at first, and then I think the part where, I mentioned earlier, the part where, she kind of hears about the plan to change the manual and stuff. She kind of laughs, when she was kind of laughing at that, I'm like, oh yeah, this is Huang Rong. This is okay. I was when I started to like accept her as being that character, and I think probably by about but by the end of the movie, I'd completely I wasn't even thinking about it at all. So yeah, I think she did a great job.
I think the most jarring change is when they get to Brave Archer and his mate, and Guo Jing is no longer played by Alexander Fusheng. I forget who plays Guo Jing in that version, but
Philip Kwok does.
Oh, does he? Okay, so
yes.
It's a really weird thing because he's already playing Guo Jing, and then he has to go and become the son of Yang Kang, and it's a weird change up. I get why they did it. I totally get why he's maybe more suitable as a Yanggua than. Do you know what I'm saying? But
they changed Guo's character from being honest and not so smart to being too serious and too smart. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Like he went from being completely dumb to being almost able to match wits with his wife.
Okay, yeah,
So yeah,
I need to see that one again. I haven't seen it in a little while, but we should do that at some point because that, in fact, Adam, that might be even good for the Return of Condor Heroes series because they gloss over a lot of the earlier parts of the novel, and that movie actually, again, it's not my favorite by any stretch, but it does get some of the details of Yanggua's life on Peach Blossom Island down. But,
okay, so that movie covers Return of Condor Heroes in part.
It covers the first part of Return of Condor Heroes.
Okay.
So there's a section of the book where you get sort of Yanggua as a kid, on Peach Blossom Island up until he goes to Chuan Zen sect, where he becomes a disciple, and then he meets Xiaolong Nu, and it gets like right up to that point, I think, in the Brave Archer and his mate. And the series that we're watching just so happens to kind of gloss over all that part of it. So most series usually get into it in more depth, but I think if I remember the 2006 one, it mainly deals with that stuff in flashbacks, I think.
Okay.
But yeah, the cast stuff here, I mean, it's just an all-star cast, and we're like, you know, I guess it's something we probably should have brought up. I mean, there's Philip Kwok, there's Lu Feng, there's Alexander Fusheng, Li Yimin is Yang. I think he's a great Yang Kong, by the way.
He is.
He is.
He's very he has it down, just his deviousness.
And I mean,
but it balances out his other roles in other movies too, where he's more of the nicer character.
Yeah, I thought he's really great as a bad guy. He's
very versatile, but he's really good as a bad guy.
He just comes up with a guy who's not nearly as smart as he thinks he is too. I think he plays that really well.
But yeah, it was Johnny Wang as as Ouyang Feng. I thought was great. I especially love the chops on the that really sort of rounded out the character, I thought. But yeah, and Gu Feng is Hong Qigong. But yeah, so I mean, we're going on an hour, so I'll end it here, I guess, before we just keep meandering. But yeah, I think this is solid. I definitely would recommend people watch it. I think it's handy to at least look up the story so people know some of the information, because like we were saying at the start of this, especially at that point from like the end of the first one, like maybe like 20 minutes into the second one, there's a good deal of stuff that could maybe confuse you. And that narration at the start, I feel, is very rapid. And I think if you didn't know the story, you're like, wait, they're on a boat now, and oh wait, they're on an island. And so
the way it also covers new territory in the thing. It was like I was like, wait, this wasn't in the version of the movie I saw. You know, I did look at the because I've been watching them on Prime. I did go back to the other movie and I checked. There wasn't 15 minutes remaining or something, and I somehow accidentally turned it off. Because these movies end very abruptly. I was like, maybe it's possible I somehow ended it early, but I don't know. But that did rattle me.
Yeah. So we'll be back on next week with Brave Archer 3. And then I guess what's after that? Chinese Ghost Story is the next one.
Yes.
All right. I'm looking forward to that. Hopefully you guys will like it, because
I've been wanting to watch that for years, so I'm very excited. I've been hearing.
I've seen a Chinese Ghost Story.
Oh,
so I'm in.
All right. Okay. So, well, I won't ask you what you thought about it now. I'll wait till we till the next
save it.
To it. Yeah. But yeah. So we'll be doing that, and then we should have some other movies lined up for the next month. I know we're doing a much better job of organizing our viewings, and so so all right, so we will let you go, and again, feel free to go on Prime if you have it and watch these movies before we do the discussions. It can give you sort of an idea of what we're talking about. But the movie is the Brave Archer series. This is the second film. There's 3 films, then there's a sort of additional Brave Archer and his mate, and you can watch these on Prime right now. I do recommend, if you like them, getting them on DVD, because the DVDs I think they have good features for this series. A lot of times I won't recommend it, but in this case I think that the commentary is particularly good, and the commentary talks about the story. So even if you haven't read it, if you watch the commentary, you can get some of the information about the story. So we'll be back on, and we will talk